Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. Here are the images of St. Teresa with the arrow. Get that one out of the way. The arrow piercing her heart, the transverberation. Do you see that arrow there? And she's fallen in a swoon and, grabbing at her chest there. This one is by Gregorio de Ferrari, 1680 to 1690, approximately, when he painted it. So 100 years maybe after her death. And here's the other one. Let me get it over here. Wait, is that the one? No. Sorry, I went too far there. Here it is. Okay. This is the one by Bernado Strazzi. And this was painted around 1614, so maybe 35 years 35 years after her death. The angel piercing her heart. It's called Transverberation of the Heart. Transverberation of the Heart. And the question was, what was that arrow? Somebody wasn't familiar with that. And it is a mystical experience that happens. Not very often, I don't think. I don't know really, but as far as the ones that we know about, there weren't oodles. I think maybe Mary Magdalene de Paz might have. Sometimes the stigmatics will also have that happen. So I think Padre Pio, I don't think his heart was wounded per se. He had the other wounds, and I believe he also had shoulder wound. He had the hands, the feet, the stigmata of that, but he might have had his heart, but I don't think. Anyway, these were the images in this book that brought up this question. So I'm going to read what I'd written back of what I know of it, and then also personal experience. That is the arrow shot by an angel when her heart was transverberated. This is a spiritual and mystical phenomenon by which a person's heart is mystically, but also physiologically wounded. And after death, if autopsy performed, the actual heart can also be found to have a wound or a scar. And hers did when she died. So one of the first things they looked for was, they took parts of her body and sent this and that there and everywhere. Different churches wanted it on display or in their reliquary. Fingers, they would do hair, fingernails, anything of these saints. This was back in the 16th century that she died. I think it was, 1583 that she died. And so they took out her heart. I've seen it. It's in a jar filled with liquid, preserved it, and her arm also. It's in the convent where she died. The rest of her body is elsewhere. Well, I think the body's there. I think it's incorrupt, but other parts of her are in other places. I'm not sure exactly where her body is, if it's at that convent or someplace else, in Alba de Tormes. The one that she died in and was northwest of Avila, Spain. So let's see. Anyway, you can see the scar in her heart. And of course, by this time, it would have disintegrate. It's incorrupt also, but it's not out. It's not out. It's sort of like, I think it's in a jar. I don't know if there's liquid in it or not. I think so. Not sure on that. But I saw it in her arm. So it's in effect a sign of God's love for the person, for that soul, and also a kind of bond or contract, as the person has given his or her heart to Christ. And it can be a bond of love that also signifies the person is going to suffer a great deal. And in effect, God, and the person maybe is offered even, or didn't know yet, but it can be a sign of that, and like a commitment, exchange, like a vow or a ring in a marriage. This, to have the heart wounded in that way is a commitment between the lover and the beloved, a sign. So, and the bond and the contract, the person, him or herself, sometimes offers this love or expresses love, deep love, in a impulsive or intense expression, an inner feeling of tremendous love and longing of Christ. And the transverberation does not usually, or not that I have known, occur at that same time, though. It might be. I don't think Teresa, I think it was unexpected for her. Certainly was for me. God usually surprises the person by this action, this wounding, or what is called a transverberation of the heart. It can occur when the person is not aware of having given even tremendous love. But God is giving that person his love in a sign, in a big way. God usually surprises, I already said that. The heart will actually enlarge. At times it can. And it does not require seeing or experiencing an angel or otherwise even an arrow piercing the heart. But she did. She saw it. And it can occur as a sign or bond without the visual effect involved, but often the person will see with inner sight or in a waking vision an angel, sometimes Michael, but not always. Could be other angels. Usually I think it would be a seraphim or a cherub. The cherubim or seraphim, they're the highest order of angels. Michael's an archangel, and that's a lower level than the seraphim or the cherubim. Or can be angels, but it's one that is given that duty, a direct assignment from God. Let me find this. The arrow, or it could be a sword, can be a bolt of light, piercing or wounding the heart. This can occur more than one. Don't do this to me, please. More than one time in a person's life. I've had it happen twice. It's been twice. The first time, the effects of the heart enlarging, at least that happened to me. It was my heart enlarged. It was as if bursting, pounding, having intense pain that can last a while and then even be physically sore, the heart sore, and expanding and as if growing, and be that way for a couple of days. But that can be when God himself or Christ himself wounds or consecrates the person's heart in a type of unspoken love contract. So, and that can happen without the arrow. God wounding or consecrating the heart. find the spot. Otherwise, an angel usually appears and with an arrow or a spear pierces a person through the chest and into the heart, creating a tremendous pain that can overcome the person for a brief while or cause them to call out in anguish, depending on how the person handles pain. And she did. She moaned from the pain. I didn't. I was used to pain. I think the time St.Michael did with the spear, though, but the first time I had my heart transverberated, there was no arrow, no spear, and it happened at a healing. Well, I'll get into that. The other time, the next time, it was before a major assignment that was going to be very painful to see and to know what the assignment was and to bear that suffering. It involved a priest. And so St. Michael ran the spear through. I was on the floor praying, and these demons came around first, and St. Michael came. That's when he proclaimed, love to suffer and suffer to love. And came over and just put the spear right down in that. And I'll give the effects, what that felt like. Well, no, I'll give it now. It was a tremendous burning and horrific pain that then went into this sweetness, this incredible sweetness and heat, warmth. And then it subsided. And you're left there just incredible. It's incredible experience. But that was different than the very first time I had my heart wounded and transverberated, but also God said he had consecrated, he had wounded my heart. And this was in June 19th of 95 that this happened. Let me get to other aspects of the wounding of these things. What happens? Because it can happen to anyone. I'm just describing it. So if it happens, you'll understand what's happening to you. I've gone through how it's painful, becomes very sweet then. Nearly at the same time as the arrow or spear goes in deeper, there's this sensation of warmth, actual delight, and sweetness. Experiencing that love, and you long for that love. It's like the sex act. Maybe the first can be painful, but then sweet, and this glorious love overtakes the body. So it is this love, suffer, love, suffer. Love to suffer, suffer to love. The angel soon or immediately disappears from view. Happened. I'm not sure how often it can be that the same person will have a second or third such wounding. But the first is a transverberation. The ensuing may be, from my thought on it and experience, to renew the love contract between Christ and the person, and in a means of bolstering the person for another major suffering, often in part with an assignment the person is to handle on earth with a soul that will be particularly painful for the person to take well, as the person has come to love what God loves, to care about deeply, and what also God deeply loves. But it hurts God even more. It's a joint effort. It's this contractual being wounded like that. If it's in preparation for an assignment, It is, of a reminding you of the contract you have with God to love to suffer and to suffer to love. And before something is going to be asked of you, or you will be shown something so painful that you need the power of that reminder of the bond of your heart has been wounded and consecrated by God, be it by himself or by an angel doing it. So it gives the person a strength of heart, as the heart is in effect consecrated by and to God by the wounding. There are not any exterior marks that I know of. I haven't read of that in history. She did not have any exterior blood coming out or exterior mark. I haven't, but I haven't read every single, by any means, of these kinds of situations. So, but there may have been in history. Trying to recall if Padre Pio had any external marks. I think he had a wounding on his heart or chest. But when he received his stigmata, he was felled. He fell to the ground in excruciating. He cried out loudly, and some of the other friars heard. And the monks heard and came running and found him on the floor, and blood, with this blood from his different portions of his body, that the same wounds that Christ received in his wounds of crucifixion. And Padre Pio saw an angel or a figure, but it was light. It was like light piercing him in all these different beams of light in his extremities at one time. Got him. So then I'll describe my first experience, June 19th of 1995, 2 months and 3 days prior to my confirmation, my confirmation as a Catholic. I didn't know at this point in June that I was going to become Catholic, but I was having instruction from this priest, attending Mass daily without receiving the Eucharist, and he allowed me to go to confession but not receive any absolution because I wasn't yet Catholic, but he would give me counsel. He knew I was quite eager, and I wanted to start getting my sins out from my life, and practice, And then when I did become Catholic, I did a life, confession of my life in general, and then all that I had said prior was included in that as an umbrella, and then I had the absolution, the actual sacrament. So it was a wounding, a consecrating of my heart, as I was told the next morning when I asked the Lord what he'd done to my heart the night before, because people were telling me, you've got to go to this healing mass. A Father Luby from Maryland, who had the gift of healing, was coming to my hometown and to the other parish, St. Mary's, it was a Tuesday night, or Monday night I think it was a Monday night. And they said, because of all my constant pain, my spine and everything, all that pain I had all the time. Didn't know it was arachnoiditis then, but I knew, I was permanently disabled. The surgeon had deemed that, from intractable pain, he called it. Serious, high-level intractable pain. And incapable of working anything consistently because of the pain, because I couldn't sit more than 5 minutes or stand more than 5 minutes without it becoming so severe that I couldn't think clearly even. So, it's one of those things. So I was so excited. My kids were excited. The eldest one didn't say anything, but she was very interested, hoping, that I would be healed. It would make a big difference in all of our lives. The second daughter was very excited. Son was excited. He was little then. And when that little, 11 maybe 12. The other daughter was 17 and just getting ready to go to college. And the other one had already finished her freshman year, was 19. So I went to this healing mass, even though I couldn't, partake of the mass. I could be there for the mass, but not have communion or anything. And afterwards, I was, fully anticipating, trying with faith to believe that with all my heart that I was going to be healed of my spine and leg pain. I had a lot of leg pain, did before they put the pump in, which handles a lot of the leg pain. See, get through some of this other stuff. I said that was different than 2 times later. This experience was of having heart stabbed through by St.Michael, pierced by this sword, and another time Jesus himself put a crucifix down into my heart without saying a word. But that was the same effect, very painful, and then got very, very sweet and intensely hot. But I don't know if I have a crucifix in my heart or not. I haven't had a heart CT scan to know. Oh, but I did have a lot of heart. No, it would have. No, that was before then, though. When I had my surgery that did all this, I had those cardiac arrests back in 87, so that was way before this. So I don't know. But it was about this size, actually. But I didn't have this crucifix then. But he stood by my bed and just put it down in. It was another commitment. It was after I was scapegoated out of the soup kitchen, and that was so painful for me. And he was letting me know, this is suffering, and you'll get through it, and I'm giving you this cross, as another sign, because I hadn't had any sign other than my wounding of the heart before. That would have been 4 years prior to this, not this crucifix, a crucifix put down into my heart. So, and then it would have been in 2004, 5 years later from the crucifix in my heart, that St. Michael pierced me in preparation for this terribly painful situation with this one priest. Very sad, very painful, emotionally painful. And I needed that added reminder of this bond, of my wounded heart having been consecrated in suffering, and so that I would have the strength to suffer more. Another assignment. See what else here. Already made that pronouncement. Trying to look at anything else with that the healing service. So you go up, they call after the mass, the priest, this priest who had the gift of healing, this Father Luby, he's not alive anymore on earth. And but he invited people to come up, and the ushers usher you up, and the priest will make the sign of the cross or put holy water on you or touch your head or something. And the Holy Spirit would have an effect on the person. And it could be a healing of some sort that you experience and feel, or a sense of the Holy Spirit's presence in you and not be healed. But people often will fall. The Holy Spirit will come over from the power of the gift of healing in this healing priest. In this case, it was his father, Luby, from Maryland. So when he touched me, my forehead, I fell to the ground it didn't look anything different than anyone else who fell. And they had ushers who would, help get you down. But, and then be swooned for not very long. And then the ushers, get people up, or they'd get up on their own. But in my case, something happened, but I didn't know it was different. It was tremendous power of the Holy Spirit, major power. And as I went down and lay there, my heart got huge in me, in my chest, huge and pounding and painful. And eventually, this sweetness, but just a tremendously, and the heart, at first it didn't start out, it just grew bigger and bigger and bigger in my chest cavity. It was pressing on my abdomen organs. It felt like my ribs were going to break. The heart got huge, up, hard to breathe, up, pressure up in my neck to breathe. And the heart pounded and pounded and pounded. And I was so overcome. And I'm not an emotional type person. I'm not, I was very self-conscious. I don't want to be seen, or, that I'm very, in any kind of situation like that. But I couldn't get up. The heart was still pounding, and I don't know how long I was on the floor, but finally these ushers came. This is my hometown, so they might have known me, I don't know. But there were some people out, had already been through and up and out in their seats, waiting for the service to be over or to leave. They knew me. Some people I grew up next to, through high school on, lived next to us when my parents moved to a different house in my childhood home. And they were there. They were Catholic, and I wasn't Catholic yet, but they had seen me at Mass, knew that I was considering. But they got me up, these ushers did, 2 of them, because I was dead out, and the pain and the pounding. But I said nothing. I couldn't really talk. Got me back to the seat, the pew, happened to be right behind these former neighbors. Because I was then, 30, I was 44 then. I'd come back. I'd been away, married and 3 children, and came back, divorced and came back. So I had to lay down in the pew, not only from my back, but at that point, I laid down because of the pounding. Otherwise, I would have slouched her. My heart hurt so terribly. And I was freaking out inside, trying not to let it show because I'm self-conscious. And I didn't know what was going on with my heart. But I felt no back pain, no spine pain, no leg pain. The heart was like the whole of my body, pounding and huge and pressing in. But it didn't physically stick out. But it felt like it was just like a huge. And the couple turned around, and the woman said, Well, you must have had quite some experience. You were down a long time. So people noticed, and that embarrassed me, but I couldn't talk because of all the pain and the pounding and how big it was. So and my breathe, hard to breathe. I did everything was pressing on my lungs too. So I didn't say anything. I just sort of looked at her because I was like, oh, dear God, what's wrong? But I stayed quite a while there. People were leaving and stuff, but I had to wait till I could get up and have the wherewithal to get to my car and drive home. Well, 5 minutes is all it took. Such a small town, I didn't live that far. And, but by then, I could tell, I still had no pain. And that made me ecstatic, going in the house. And the one daughter came and the son out, the other daughter, I think she was back in the background, but not, she wasn't really speaking to me much that summer. And I didn't know why until about maybe 12 years ago, 13 years ago. This month did I even know why. Oh, just sad situation. But anyway, no, it was just a miscommunication. She assumed something, and I didn't even know what was bothering it. What I kept asking, and she wouldn't talk about it. So, till 13 years ago this month, got angry and told me. I asked her, for going over, telling me things, tell me what it was. And oh my goodness. So unnecessary. Anyway, but I even could jump up and down. I hadn't been able to jump up and down since 1984, before the accident. And the daughter was there, was all excited, and as I thought, oh, I've been healed of the pain, I've been healed of the pain. But I said, something happened to my heart. Obviously, it wasn't huge then, but it still hurt. It was painful. I said, something happened to my heart, though. And I didn't know if it was connected with my heart attacks I'd had that caused me to die in surgery in 1987. And that was when they had all this equipment come into my room because I couldn't be moved for 18 days and had to go home in an ambulance and stay in a hospital bed for 3.5 months longer. So they had this top cardiac specialist of in Escondido and the coast even of Southern California check my heart because this surgeon, he felt liable. And because it was a miracle I had lived with the massive heart attacks I had. And he just couldn't believe it. There was absolutely no heart damage. So, but I thought, well, maybe it was something with that this healing had instead, made my heart hurt instead of my spine or something. I didn't know what had gone on. And so, hard time getting to sleep. They were excited, and because no pain down the legs, no spine pain. Well, the next morning I woke up, and of course pain had come back to my spine and my legs, and my heart still hurt. Not nearly like it had, but still, and I was sore to the touch. It was just sore and painful. And I just said in my mind, Lord, what have you done to my heart? And that's when he said immediately back, I have wounded, I have consecrated your heart. And that was it. Well, I didn't know what that meant. Called, as soon as the rectory opened, called, made an appointment, please let me get in, asked to talk to the priest. So I get there, I describe it all, and he said, well, you've had what's called a transverberation of the heart. And he says, I've not known of anyone who's had that in all my 40 years as a priest, blah, blah. Well, this was the And he said, just, monitor it. And he says, hopefully the pain will go away, because it had subsided. But it took probably 3 days total for it to get back. And for me not to even to touch, it was painful, physically so. But it did. It calmed down and went back to normal. He said, of course, don't talk about this with anyone and around here. I said, well, my kids know, but they don't know what it is or anything. But I explained to the one daughter who was interested. But I don't know if he said, he might have said Teresa of Avila had that happen to her. And, well, I don't know. You don't make any deal about this stuff. This is the first time I've ever said, but I'm anonymous, and I want people to know what these things are like. It can happen to anyone, and I'm sure it has. They just don't talk about it, or don't have reason to, and I'm sharing my life. And I'm also sharing mystical experiences, because it can happen to anyone. And I wished I had known more about ecstasies, because that really worried me. And no one knew anything about it. Not the bishop, not these priests. They didn't know what was going on, or how long, or what it would be, or if it would stop, or anything. And then they were all concerned that it wasn't an ecstasy, that it was me doing something, or whatever. They just got really unhinged, off whack, and unaccepting of me, even at Mass then, eventually. So, and unkind. It wasn't good. If any priests ever listen to this, I just want people to withhold judgment, be kind, and I guess judge if the person is a known mentally ill or something, or off kilter. Yeah, then you can, I would think, have right to be concerned about the person. But otherwise, even in that situation, why cause someone agony or upset? So, anyway, that's transverberation of the heart with an arrow or a sword. And the first, though, that was a wounding also, but a consecration. And it would have been maybe 2 or 3 weeks later that I was told that my sufferings and the sufferings of Holy Mother Church would be made one by the power of that locution by that angel, which I think at that time was Gabriel, Archangel Gabriel, although I didn't see an image. So, but that's the wounding, having your heart consecrated, and being pierced either with an arrow or a sword. And that later one was the crucifix down was Christ reminding me, this is suffering. You had that, you loved that soup kitchen, you gave your all. Could have been happy the rest of my life doing it. That could have been my outreach, and loved it. But God did not want that for me. And I had my penance, and then had to face the suffering of what went on, the persecution in my hometown. And so Jesus gave me that crucifix down in my heart to withstand, to help me withstand that kind of suffering of persecutions that Christ had. And then the other was, like I said, 5 years later, St.Michael with the sword through as a means of reinforcing and preparing me for this other suffering of the priest, of this younger priest, this 40-year-old priest, 39 at the time, and then what he was involved in. That was particularly painful to God, to Christ, to have a priest. So that was my assignment with that. And added reminder of the wound piercing, but I did not have the ongoing pain or the overnight or 3 days at all. That was very brief piercing. Very, very painful with the sword, but anyway, that's my experiences with this. And Teresa of Avila was similar, as I have come to find out. There is a YouTube video of a description. Well, she writes about her experience. Teresa of Avila did. So she spoke of it, explained it in her writings, I don't know if it was in The Way of Perfection or in her life, but she wrote it saying, and people have found it distress, sort of I didn't mind. She tried to not use her name. So she'd say, I know of this person who had this happen. Of course, everyone knows it's her, but every line it's, and of this person and of that person who had this happen. And this one man, a friend of mine, Episcopalian, who was in a spiritual direction program with some nuns. He didn't want to be Catholic, but he wanted to do spiritual direction, and he would have been very good, and he was good because he was had been a psychologist, clinical psychologist with a PhD, but he developed narcolepsy, so could not practice. He'd fall asleep at unknown times, but he wanted to do spiritual direction with people in his church, and that didn't have the licensing requirements, etc. That it wouldn't have, he wasn't charging for as a licensed clinical psychologist. So if he fell asleep, it was okay. Had the narcolepsy during giving spiritual direction. It wasn't going to be the end of his career, in other words. So, but it drove him batty. He had to read Teresa of Avila's writings, and he couldn't stand it. Oh, just say, it's me, all this extra wording to get to the point, But I didn't mind. I knew she'd probably been directed to do that, or out of humility to say. And no one who knows me, knows me as me, or, out and about, no one knows. My spiritual father's deceased, and the priest back then is maybe 95 now or something. And don't know if he has dementia or not, but he's back in his monastery, Capuchin monastery, so he wouldn't remember. Oh, this was the thing. Later on, I said something to him, and maybe it was about that or something else, and he says, "Oh, I don't know anything about that." He tried game playing. He was a character. He was the one that I really bothered. He really resented me later on, but didn't take too much longer, a couple months. So he loses temper at me and everything. So that's transverberation of the heart. Teresa's experience, which she described pretty much the same as what I did with that, the incredible pain. And of course, I made no noise, and it's incredible pain with my heart enlarging like that. And if anybody knows if the heart enlarging is different, it's called something different, but that's what God said. He had wounded, he had consecrated my heart. And the other I knew was with the piercing. I knew what that was. And I didn't know that it would be done with a crucifix by Jesus, but God does what he wills and wants. So, and I feel no effects now. But I did off and on for a long time feel heart pain, like during communion, during consecration. That would go on, especially when I also had interior stigmata. The heart would pain terribly during consecration. I forgot about that. For years after. Not every single Mass, but off and on. In a uniting. And so it's called to suffer. I am. God bless his real presence in us.